Thanks, Mom. It is virtually impossible for you as a teenager and for us as adults to arrive at the correct answer if we ask really bad questions. Let me say that again. It is virtually impossible for all of us in this room, young or old, to arrive at a correct answer if we're asking really bad questions. So here's what I would like to propose to us if I could. I want you to ask yourself a really good question this morning. And here's the question. What is one thing, teenager, what is one thing, adult, that you are irrationally confident about? What is one thing that you are irrationally confident about? And here's what I mean by irrational confidence. You really have no reason to be as cocky and arrogant as you are about that one thing. So everybody got it in your mind, the one thing that you are the most irrationally confident about, and I want you to turn to somebody right now beside you and tell them, this is the one thing I'm irrationally confident about. On your mark, get set, tell somebody right now. Some of y'all are not playing along. Cool. All right, that's enough. Everybody chill. That's good. Are y'all not participating? Oh, what was yours? You forgot yours already? What was yours? Hold on. Everybody listen, hold on. Speaking, talking to other people, you're irrationally confident that you're talking to me. And you're irrationally confident that you can... What? You can speak. You just spoke to me. You should be confident in that. Well done. All right, good. Anybody have another one? What's yours? Okay, so my man here said, I'm irrationally confident about how good the Dallas Cowboys are. Hey, y'all are not understanding. The man is admitting he has no reason to be confident. And it's crazy. Some guy, I know this happened. Some guy turned to a friend and was like, I can pull with all the ladies. Okay, I know that happened. And you are somebody, right? We know you are. It's crazy how many of us have irrational confidence about things we shouldn't be confident about. I heard this story, actually when I got sick a couple of years ago, I did this deep dive into Muhammad Ali's life. Muhammad Ali, arguably the greatest boxer of all time. We can argue about that later. But for those of you that don't know, Muhammad Ali was incredibly arrogant and cocky, and he was irrationally confident. So irrationally confident that he did this one time on a plane. For those of you that don't fly much, what you should know is that when you get on a plane, especially at takeoff and landing, the stewardesses are going to mandate, it is a federal law, that you are buckled, seat belted when you're taking off and when you're landing. And so they had made this announcement several times, and the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, refused to put on his seatbelt. And so finally, this stewardess walks up to him and says, sir, you have to put on your seatbelt. And he looked at her and said, Superman don't need no seatbelt. And she looked at him and said, Superman don't need no plane. Put your seatbelt on. This happened a couple of years ago, and I've done BigStuf a long time. This happened a couple of years ago here, and you don't have to be as concerned about this now as we did back then. But I was here, someone else was speaking, and my wife and I were talking to some youth leader friends out in the lobby, and while the session was going on, two teenage girls from BigStuf came running in back by the pool where the snow cone place is. They come running in, and when I tell you there was fear in their eyes and they were screaming like a bunch of girls at a Bieber concert, they're just like, ah! And I immediately, my dad reflexes jump in and I'm like, what's wrong? Have you ever gotten so scared that you can't actually say what's wrong with you? You just hyperventilate. Girls, you know what I'm talking about? These girls are like, I was like, and finally one of them got out, a man in a trench coat just flashed us. And the only thing I could think to do, leaders, I hope you'll appreciate this, is I must find him. So I take off running out the door, and they were like, he was that way. And so when it's dark by this time, and I can see this figure with a trench coat. He had walked straight back from the property, was on the beach, and was turning left. And because I was an athlete, I realized I gotta take the angle. So I go this way, and he realizes, because I'm booking chili, that I'm chasing him, and he takes off. So now there's a race. He's heading toward La Vida, Club La Vida, and I'm going, and then it hit me. As I'm getting ready to catch him, I'm like, what am I gonna do when I catch a naked man? Because can we all agree? Nobody needs to see that, because that's just nasty, all right? That's just, you don't. But I was irrationally confident I can handle this. And so many of us in this room, there are so many things that you're confident about, and think of it this way. Adults, since the beginning of time, have been telling underage people, don't talk to strangers, right? So many of you in this room, you've heard that since you were little. Don't talk to strangers. And then in 1998, because of a ton of circumstances, don't talk to strangers became, don't get in a car with a stranger. And then in 2008, because of the invention of the internet, that don't talk to strangers, don't get in a car with strangers became, don't ever meet someone alone that you met on the internet. And now it's 2022, and this is what we tell you. Use the internet to order Uber to pick you up so you can get into a car alone with a stranger. Because we are irrationally confident. Let me go another step. Can you throw that picture up on the screen? What do Kate Beckinsale, calm down, Junior. What do Kate Beckinsale, Ariana Grande, which every time I say her name, don't you feel like you're ordering something from Taco Bell? Anyway, Ariana Grande and a large Pepsi, all right? And Kim Kardashian, what do these three women have in common? Let me tell you what these three women have this in common. Next picture. They've all dated this dude. And all the guys up here are going, Pete, listen, shh. Here's what Pete Davidson proves to every dude in this room. Hot guys have a really hard time being funny, but funny guys somehow can become hot. And all the girls, so for every dude here that's been doing push-ups since the sun came up, because you gotta make sure your abs are still are showing when you get on the beach, instead of push-ups, you should have been doing stand-up. That's what you should have done. And I know this is gonna happen, and please don't do this. There's gonna be some dude girl that walks up to you today on the beach and's like, want me to tell you a joke? And you can just look at him and go, you're the joke, okay? Do that. But here's what it proves. We so easily mistake in our culture confidence with competence. And we are so easily misled. And let me press the gas a little bit. Every one of you in this room, this is a generalization, but I think it's safe. Most of you in this room as a teenager, if you have social media, here's what's happened with you. Social media has the capacity now to basically, here's what an algorithm is. An algorithm, teenagers, an algorithm, adults, is a leadership map. It tells you who you are following and what you are following. It literally preys upon you this way. Whatever it is you follow and whoever it is that you follow, it begins to do this mathematical equation and it starts doing this consideration for you. These are the things and these are the people that you consider important, and they just continue to put it in front of you. I had lunch with a very dear friend this week who has teenagers. And I need to say this to every young man in this room. Guys, look at me. Some of you, your parents keep saying this to you about your social media. Why is there so much sexual stuff on your social media? And you play this victim role, I don't know. Watch this. If all you do is look at boobs and booty, what's gonna keep showing up is more boobs and more booty. And you're giving yourself away because that's what you're following. And please, I love you too much to be scared of hurting your feelings. Because for some of you, you're being misled because of what you put your eyes on, who you watch, what you listen to, and who you listen to. So this morning, as we talked about the bread of life and we've talked about the light of the world, it's crazy for those of us, young and old, that think that an archaic library of books has nothing to say to a teenager in 2022, that Jesus speaks directly to this issue on how easily misled we are. If you've got your Bible, you can turn to John chapter 10. And if you don't have your Bible, that's okay, because we're going to throw this up on the Magnavision plasmas on either side. But I need to say this, if you and I are to properly understand John chapter 10, we have to understand John chapter 9. And John chapter 10, to be very candid with you, is one of the most misunderstood chapters in John's account of Jesus' life for one verse. And we'll get to that in just a second. But let me tell you what happens in John chapter 9. The beginning of John chapter 9, Jesus and his closest followers have an encounter with a blind beggar. First century Jews, teenagers, first century Jews, adults, had a crazy high belief in karma. So much so that when these men and Jesus see this blind beggar, they look at Jesus and immediately say, they equate in their mind, because he's blind, this is the way it went down in Judaism at the time. If someone is blind, either this guy has sinned or his parents have sinned. And do not think that karma has gone away in America, because how many times have you found out that a friend or a loved one has cancer and your first thought was, were they a smoker? Or somebody gets COVID and we immediately go pre-existing conditions. Or somebody's really depressed and you're like, oh, Auburn football fan. You know what I'm saying? Sorry, Auburn people. LSU, it could be anybody, all right? Calm down, Shreveport. Anyway. So Jesus answers his disciples in a very interesting way. They go, who sinned, this guy or his parents? And he goes, neither. This has happened so that God can show off. And here's literally what he does. Jesus uses spit and mud and the pool of Siloam and heals a man born blind on the Sabbath. He heals him. Here's what he does. He literally hocks a loogie, spits into the dirt, makes some mud, rubs the mud on the dude's eyes, and he tells him to go to the pool of Siloam, and he does this on the Sabbath. And at this time in Judaism, God didn't work on the Sabbath, and Chick-fil-A was not open on Sabbath. And so Jesus has healed someone on the Sabbath, and this is really important, especially for those of you that you've been coming to BigStuf for an extended period of time. It's really important that we recognize that Jesus sends him to the pool that he sends him to, because there were two in the mind of Jews. There were two healing pools in this vicinity. There was the pool of Bethesda. I'll say it right in a minute. Bethesda, and there was the pool of Siloam. The pool of Bethesda, there was an ancient legend that an angel every once in a while would come and flap its wings over the water. And if the angel came and flapped its wings over the water would be stirred. And if you could jump in the water while the waters were stirred, that angel flapping its wings would heal you. The pool of Siloam was not that way. The pool of Siloam was unabashedly ordinary. And I think Jesus sent this guy to the pool of Siloam to simply go, only Jesus healed this guy. There was no superstition going on here. Teenagers, watch this. There is no superstitious thing about BigStuf. Let's be really, really clear. Some of you are like, if I can just get to big stuff over the summer. No. You sleep where you sleep and you eat where you eat and you're as hot as all get out. There is no superstition here. Jesus is the only one that heals. And this man is healed. He goes and washes his eyes in the pool of Siloam and he's healed. And what happens? The Pharisees get their tunics in a wad because Jesus heals someone on the wrong day. There is nothing more dangerous than someone who just got healed by Jesus. Some of you, you're gonna go back to your respective city and town and your team, your community, your home, and you're gonna feel this tension because you were once blind and now you can see, and all chaos breaks loose around you because there's nothing more dangerous than a person to any faith. There's no more dangerous person to a faith community than someone that's just met Jesus. And what happens? This guy washes off his eyes. Now he can see. He runs back to where he was, and people see him coming, and they're going, isn't that the dude that was born blind? And someone literally say, no, that's not him. He just looks like him. And the dude is literally like, no, it's really me. And that word gets to the religious leaders who are already ticked off with Jesus anyway. And now they find out that this guy's claiming that Jesus healed him on a Sabbath, which you don't know. And they also didn't recognize Jesus as God. And so they begin to quarrel and debate and are divided in that. So they call his parents in. And his parents, students, adults, his parents are so afraid of the Pharisees because the word is that if you don't follow along with what the religious leaders think, you're gonna get kicked out of the synagogue. They ask the parents, was this dude born blind and how was he healed? And they go, he was born blind, but he's old enough, you can ask him how he is healed, because they didn't want to get kicked out of the synagogue. There's so much chaos, and here's what's being missed. Someone was blind and now they can see, but they're quarreling over goofy stuff because we so easily mistake confidence for competence, and we are so easily misled. And eventually they call the blind guy back in who can now see, and they're like, tell us again what happened. And he gets kind of cocky at this point. He's like, do y'all want to follow this Jesus too? Because he did this to me. Is that what's going on? And they're so mad at him. And eventually he says, it's crazy strange, the man replied. This man healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. And they kick him out of the synagogue. And Jesus gets word that this cat has been harassed by the religious leaders. And you gotta remember, last time this dude was around Jesus, he couldn't see. Jesus had put mote over his eyes, go to the pool of Siloam and wash it off. So this guy never sees Jesus. Jesus walks up to him, and he's just, I was just standing there, right? I was just doing nothing right. And this dude, he's doing this whole thing. And Jesus walks up to him and goes, do you wanna see the Son of Man? And the guy's like, yeah. And Jesus is like, you're looking at him. And he freaks out and he begins to worship. And Jesus says, this is the reason that I've come. I have come to give sight to those who are blind, and I've come to convince those who think they see that they're blind. And the Pharisees are so arrogant that they go, are you calling us blind? And Jesus says, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty, but you remain guilty because you claim you can see. And it's important for you to understand that to properly understand this, because it's on the heels of him saying this to those religious leaders. Adults, we have to pay attention to this, especially in a day and an age where deconstruction is happening among students that are sitting in our midst. This is what Jesus says. Verse 1, chapter 10. I tell you the truth. Anyone who sneaks over the wall of a sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. But the one who enters through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep recognize his voice and come to him. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And after he's gathered his own flock, he walks ahead of them and they follow him because they know his voice. They won't follow a stranger. They'll run from him because they don't know his voice. And those who heard Jesus using this illustration didn't understand it, so he explained it to them. I tell you the truth. This is Jesus speaking to these religious leaders. He says, I am the gate of the sheep. Teenagers and adults, when Jesus says, I am the gate of the sheep, he is literally speaking in code and saying, I am the Son of God. I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me were thieves and robbers, but the true sheep did not listen to them. Yes, I am the gate. Those who come in through me will be saved. They will come and go freely and will find good pastures. The thief's purpose, and this is the verse that all of us know about John 10. John 10:10, some of us have memorized it this way: the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come to give them life and life to the fullest. The New Living Translation says it this way: the thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy, and my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Everybody look at me, especially adults in this room. When Jesus says to those who were listening, especially the Pharisees, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come to give them life and life to the fullest. Watch this. He is not talking about the devil. He is not talking about our enemy. Ooh. He is talking about religious leaders who are leading people astray. He's talking about the Pharisees who think they can see and they're blind. He's calling them out. He's saying, you are misleading people. And I do not at all assume that some of us as leaders in this room are misleading teenagers, but here's what I do want to propose. Students, listen, is who and what you're following giving you life? Or is it causing you to just mire yourself in so much destruction and drama? Is your life, even though it's hard, and following Jesus sometimes can almost seem harder than if you didn't, are you becoming more like the one you're following? Who is it in this room, and don't raise your hand, you, because of what and who you're following, you are reflecting the shepherd in your life? Because who and what you follow will start reflecting itself in you. And so Jesus makes this claim. We've talked about him being the bread of life. We've talked to him about him being the light of the world. And now he says, I am the good shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. Now, this is important. In this culture, you basically had two kinds of shepherds. You had a shepherd who actually owned the sheep, and then you would have hired hands because perhaps there wasn't a son or a child that could shepherd the sheep that a family owned. So literally, they would hire shepherds. They would be hired hands. And so Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd sacrifices his life for the sheep. A hired hand will run when he sees a wolf coming. He'll abandon the sheep because they don't belong to him, and he isn't their shepherd. And so the wolf attacks him and scatters the flock. The hired hand runs away because he's working only for the money and doesn't really care about the sheep. I'm the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me, just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. Here's in essence what he's saying. If you're a hired hand, and there is a lion or a tiger or a bear, oh my, that comes to get the sheep, you're getting paid a shekel a day to watch bleh all the time, and a lion or a tiger or a bear comes to get the sheep and you're a hired hand, here's what you would do. Have them, I'm out. But Jesus goes, that's not who I am. I'm the good shepherd. In fact, the word good in the Aramaic that it was spoken in is tawah. And it literally means this idea of relational connection. Here's what Jesus is saying. I am not just trying to lead you and guide you. You are mine. All of us in this room know this, that shepherds would walk around with a crook or a staff like this. And here's the reason they had it. Because there would be a ton of sheep. And so a shepherd could be far away from his sheep and reach out and gently guide, push this way, nudge this way. They didn't beat sheep with their staff. And sometimes they'd have to reach down and pull them out. But there was this constant, let me guide you. Let me rescue you. Let me pull you out of that. Jesus is going, that's exactly who I am for those who I call mine. And it's really hard for us to understand it because most of us in this room, we don't come from a culture where shepherding or sheeping is a big deal. But you also have had a real life example of what the difference between a good shepherd and maybe a hired hand. Now let me say this. If you're in this room and you have a loved one, father, a mother, people in your life who are law enforcement, I am not trying to make any sort of statement, but we have literally watched this unfold in the last couple of weeks in what happened in Uvalde, Texas. Because for those of you that remember, a school shooter goes into this elementary school and begins to kill children and teachers. And if you've missed the story, one thing you need to know is that by all indications, and we need to make sure that we do not cast judgment on law enforcement because everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson said that. And law enforcement has a plan until bullets are flying. But I don't want us to focus on that. How long they were there, could they have saved the children? This is the lady that I want you to think about. A mother, Miss Gomez, who literally gets handcuffed because she's trying to get into the school. And eventually she talks her way out of being handcuffed and goes into the school to get her kids. Because watch this, when it's your kids, you'll do anything. Watch this, that is Jesus to you. You're his kid. You're his. He's not a hired hand. It doesn't matter what you've done. And for those of those, if you don't know this, sheep are really, really dumb. They do stupid things all the time. So if you're here and you're going, but Stuart, you don't understand how dumb I've been, how I've followed the wrong things, and I've become and gotten to a place or in places where it just feels like I'm being destroyed. You're exactly who Jesus is for. Because you're his kid. You're his. He will give his, not only will he give his life for you, he gave his life for you. And not only will he lay his life down for you, has he laid his life down for you, but 1,000+ years before this occurrence happened that we're reading, the second king of Israel wrote these words about what it means to be a sheep with a good shepherd. Most of us in this room have heard the 23rd Psalm, but let me read it to you. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. Let me review what David says. Remember this, David is speaking as a sheep. And he says, this is what God does for me and what God does for you. He gives you what you need. He gives you what you need. Students, look at me. Almost everything that you want by being selfish, you get by being selfless. And Jesus goes, Or David goes, God, the Lord is my shepherd. He gives me what I need. He gives me rest. Stuart, aren't you exhausted this morning? I'm not talking about physically, but some of you are in this room because of who and what you're following. It has exhausted you. It isn't leading you to rest. There are young ladies within the sound of my voice, and you are playing so many mind games with yourself because who and what you follow, just because they're more confident, isn't leading to a place where you have rest. Aren't you tired of all the comparison that you find yourself in and playing that game? David goes, he gives me rest. He gives me nourishment. He leads me. Whew. He gives me peace. He renews my strength. He guides me to the right path. He makes me brave. He's close beside me. He protects me. He comforts me. He gives me a feast. I love the fact that he says he prepares a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. Remember, David is speaking as a sheep. He's literally saying this, that I can put my head down and eat in green pastures, even though lions and tigers and bears are all around me, because I know my shepherd protects me. And doesn't that sound like a teenager in 2022? You desperately, can I just rest and get nourishment because it feels like everything around me is constantly caving in. And God's going, I'm the good shepherd. I will nourish you. I will anoint you. I will bless you. I am goodness. I am unfailing love. Paul echoes this 1,000+ years later in the first century when he says that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Here's the things that you want. And here's what I have to say to you this morning. The leaders in your life are either going to strengthen your heart or weaken your knees. Who are you following? What are you following? Homie, your boys are not leading you to life. For some of you girls, your BFFs are not leading you to life. That thing, that site, your algorithm is selling you out. It's just simply going, this is who and what you consider your leader. And I get it. I understand this because I'm no different than anybody in this room. When Paul talks about what love is, that it's patient, kind, not jealous, not boastful or proud, not rude. It doesn't demand its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of being wrong. It doesn't rejoice in injustice. It rejoices whenever truth wins out, never gives up, never loses faith, always hopeful, endures through every circumstance. It never fails. You hear love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. You hear all that love is. You hear what David says a good shepherd does, and then you live in 22 and you're going, it's like learning a different language. And adults, we need to swallow hard and recognize that. What God is calling you to, teenagers, what God is calling us to, adults, is to learn a different language in a culture that isn't being led by a good shepherd. Because, heads up, we are awful at choosing our leaders. So who are you going to follow? And are you willing to learn a different language? Because Jesus can lead you to a different language. His Spirit, He gives us, leads you to speak a different language because He's good. The Scriptures give us a new language to begin to nourish ourselves on and to begin to speak out. People in your life, teenagers, listen, the adults that are here, they are such an incredible gift to you. There's some of you in here, you've just recently lost, in my opinion, the greatest discipler of people I've ever known as a volunteer. The volunteers that are here are a gift to you because these people want to guide you. Community that you're in. Getting knee to knee with friends and having real conversation, the experiences that you have. That's how you grow in this language. And if it isn't producing goodness in you, that means that it isn't good and you need to find a different shepherd. And may I present to you Jesus. I'll shut up. Anybody see the movie Coda? Won a bunch of Academy Awards. For those of you that didn't see the movie Coda, the word or the Coda stands for Children of Deaf Adults. This young lady, Ruby, in the movie is 17 years old. She is the only hearing person in her family. Her dad and brother run a fishing business, and Ruby has helped them all her life. Her mom can't hear, her dad can't hear, her brother can't hear. And Ruby discovers, because she joins chorus at her school, that she has an insane voice. And now she's faced with this incredible tension because her family leans on her to be the translator for the world that they live in, a world where everybody else can hear and they can't. But yet she has her own desires and her own gifts. And it's an amazing movie and so emotional. But there's this one scene that I want to show you about, and here's why I'm showing it to you. Because the tension for you when we go to a small group or church group time sometime today and you're wrestling with this is this idea that you've got to learn a different language in the culture that you live in. But that's what the Good Shepherd leads you to do. He brings you to the still waters. He nourishes you. He brings you peace. There's this one climactic scene in the movie where Ruby has an opportunity to audition for a spot at Berkeley, the Berkeley School of Music. And her parents want to come and watch the audition. But she literally says to them, first of all, it would embarrass me if you show up, and you can't hear anyway, so why are you going to come? But then this happens. Check this out.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let 'em know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love call.